Today's guest is one of my favorite financial YouTube channels, very successful business and investor. Some of the best videos out there on silver, crypto, and making money in this changing world. I was first introduced to Neil when I saw his video all about the Great Reset and this reset of currency that we're in the middle in. So if you aren't familiar with Neil's channel, I'm going to go ahead and link it right there down below. You'll see the link to his website as well. Highly recommend you checking out his YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the like button on this video. Give us a comment right there down below. This is Neil Rules right there down below. And if you haven't yet, just want to say a quick shout out to our sponsor, which is Vizsla Silver, one of our favorite silver and gold mining stocks. So thank you, Vizsla Silver, for being our sponsor, and consider checking them out if you haven't yet. So Neil, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, Jake.
So congratulations on your recent move.
Yeah, got out of the UK, moved to this little island now, which is going well.
Fantastic. So the first time I was ever introduced to your work was through your video on the reset, on this whole situation that at the time, maybe you could see the writing on the wall, but now we're in this place where Federal Reserve says inflation 7.5%. In Germany, their producer price index was about 25%. It was the highest since 1949, I believe. And I don't know about where you are, but in America, regardless of your political affiliation or lack thereof entirely, regardless of your financial background or lack thereof entirely, everybody notices everything is getting more expensive and the world's changing in a lot of ways. And top it all off, we've now had some of this Russia and war types of conversations and talks. And I just want to start with a broad question of how do you digest all of this, and where are we at based off of some of your earlier videos on the changing of the socio-economic and political systems of the world?
Yeah, sure. So that's a good question to start with. So in terms of the models I made back in 2019, we're still in this sort of cyclical phase between 2020 and 2025. So we're deep in it now. Now, I mean, a lot of people always say, did you know this was going to happen? Did you know that, this pandemic? Like, I had no idea. The first time I had a sniff of anything was Event 201, which was October 2019, because I monitor, it's crazy the amount of feeds I have daily for news and everything coming in. And that was the first time I ever heard about, the whole pandemic and stuff like that. And then, of course, 2 months later, it all kicked off. That's one thing for your viewers to look into, Event 201. So in terms of the cyclical model, then we've gone through 2020, which was the start of a crisis period, 2021, which is when it really heated up. We're now in 2022, which is where we're going to see a lot more crises and a lot more of them converging together. And we're already seeing them at the moment with what's happening in Russia. And this is actually going to pull in together a dozen or more crises all at the same time because of what's actually happening. And this doesn't even include what's going on with the stock market, with these massive, spikes and troughs at the moment, with just buying and selling and all the craziness. It is pulling everything in together. So we're now going through 2022, and it's not going to get better. Inflation is not going to get better this year. It's going to get worse. And it just makes me laugh, because I think you remember I was the one saying, no, it's not going to go deflation, when you had all these economists saying deflation by the time we get to the end of 2021. And I said, absolutely no way, because we haven't even seen all the currency and the inflation from the quantitative easing coming through, which people say doesn't get into the market, which is not accurate. A proportion of it does, because when the government sells treasuries and things, that currency, the money currency that they get from selling those treasuries, they use to give out stimulus and things like that, or they use it to pay contractors for infrastructure and whatever else. So the QE money gets in, and then it takes 18 months or so before it hits the economy. So we had all of that. I talked about the energy. That was a year and a half ago, how the energy that was coming through was going to increase. when Kathy Wood said we'll never see $80 a barrel oil again, I said that's crazy. We're going to see $100 a barrel oil and more. And of course, everyone laughed, thought I was nuts. And here we are. I think it's this week. It's finally hit $100 a barrel now. So of course, what people don't realize is all of the, energy and inflation are interlinked. Everything that you're seeing in inflationary cycles right now is from the energy. So this is coming through the economy and it's pushing up inflation. And we're going to see a lot more because now you've got this new price of energy where people will be buying and you'll have all the futures and everything else going on. So this is going to help push up price inflation as well. So we are about halfway through this in fact, maybe 2/3 of the way through this crisis period, with the crises all sort of converging together at the moment, which will probably happen this year. By the end of this year, we'll probably have this whole convergence, and then let's see what happens after that. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be a good couple of years ahead. I can tell you that.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about this channel is just talking to a lot of different people that explain why they think certain things are going to happen. And I remember our first conversation, this was before all these big inflation numbers. It may even have been before Jerome Powell was really beating the drum and saying it's just transitory. When he finally admitted, hey, there is inflation, but it's transitory. It was probably even just before that. And this was when there was a lot, well, are we going to have inflation, deflation? Is everything going to crash? Are we going to go to big inflation? And, you sat here and you explained, here's why we're actually going to have big inflation. And now it's here. And I look at it and I go, how do they stop this from it not absolutely running away? And I want to get your input now that we're at a new moment in time. What does the next 12 months start to look like?
Yeah, well, definitely the next few months, let's say, we're going to see more inflation. I mean, I think the year-over-year inflation, which we got 7.5%, you may even see 8% next month. You may see 8.2% next month. Now, it was interesting because I said 7% the month just gone by, and it was 7.5%. But I made a video on this on the channel because it was quite funny. I pulled a montage of all these world-class experts making their forecasts. 5.3, 5.4%. There's no way it's going to be above 5.6%. It's impossible. They use words like impossible. It's pretty funny. So I said about 7%, and that's what I thought. And I said, if it was over 7%, I'd be quite surprised. But of course, it came in at 7.5%. So I think 8%, 8.2%, we could even see in the next month's numbers as they come out.
When you talk about crises converging, and you said we're in the cycle from 2020 until 2025, where many crises are going to converge. What do you mean by that? And what is the endpoint look like when these various crises occur? And what are these?
Yeah, well, if you think about why do we have deflation? Why is it the economists get it wrong? And they were saying that all the QE, which is quantitative, for your viewers, that's quantitative easing, it's currency creation, or not necessarily currency, but it's M1, and some of it's M1, M2, but it's creating new currency, which you see, it's difficult to explain QE, but it's what makes up the whole. I always describe it like, think of it as you've got a pool of water or 100 currency units, right? And you've got this pool of water. Now, if you pour more water in, it doesn't just stay the same size. The pool expands. Now, that's the easiest way to describe it because QE is very, very complex. QE, QT, tapering is very complex because of how they do it with the swaps, the Fed account, the banks having their accounts at the Fed, and all sorts. So we'll just keep it really simple and we'll just describe it like this pool of water. So if you think about globalization now, and you think about why the economists got it wrong this time, they said all of the new QE, so again, pouring the water in, would not make massive amounts of inflation because it didn't happen in 2008. Well, 2008 was a completely different market and different recession. So you can't just look at one recession you have to track 5 or 6 and then get these models, correlate them to what we're going through today. And unfortunately, you would expect them to do this, but a lot of them don't do it. So that's why I didn't think we'd see deflation like they saw. I thought we'd see inflation. Now, let me touch upon why. Number one is energy. I knew the energy was going to continue. That was one thing. Now, on the flip side, we have deflation, which is globalization and tech. So tech, just by default, is deflationary. So your phone, you get a better phone every year, it's the same price. So actually you're getting, better technology every single year. There's no way you would go out and buy one of those massive brick computers today for $10,000, or pounds or euros, whatever currency you're using. So technology is deflationary in nature. Globalization is deflationary in nature. So you have factories in all different countries now. If the costs in one country start going up, labor costs, etc., what actually happens then is that company, let's say it's Nike or Apple or whoever, they're just going to move their factory to another country where the costs are lower, staff costs are lower. So that's deflationary in nature. So that's globalization. So what we're seeing at the moment is a breakdown of globalization. We've seen an increase in energy costs. We've seen all the closures of factories and mines have closed, and a lot of big companies have gone out of business. We're seeing people not wanting to work because of the psychological impact that lockdowns had on people. And also not just the lockdowns, but a lot of people actually don't want to go back into the workplace because they're fearful. And it's a lot of the young people, which is bizarre. You would expect the older the person is, the more fearful they would be to go back into the workplace for health reasons. But it's the young people, they're the ones on the surveys that are most fearful of coming back into the workplace because of COVID and everything else. It makes no logical sense to be that way around. So we've got the homelessness crisis. 1 in 500 Americans is currently homeless, and that's going to ramp up to 2 to 4 in every 500 over the next year or two. So we've got people living in their cars and, the stuff in California. So you've got these crises. You have debt, personal, corporate, GDP scam that's going on, where they're creating new currency, putting it into the supply. It's being spent in the supply, and then they're counting it as GDP. They're twice counting it when it shouldn't even be counted in the first place, really, although it has to for numerical reasons. So you've got all these things converging. You've got conflict. You've got what's happening with Russia and Ukraine at the moment. All these things are just converging at the moment to brew this perfect storm. And that isn't, even getting into, the dollar and what's happening there and everything else.
I just moved into a new office and I had my internet guy come, and he had just moved to the town, and he asked me, how much one of these places cost to rent. And I told him, and he said, no, thanks. I'll just keep living in my car. And I said, do you live in your car now? He said, well, I live in my truck. And I was shocked by it because obviously this guy was working hard, probably driving around town all day. Granted, he moved there pretty recently, but I thought that was really amazing. And it just shows this bizarre situation where things are getting really expensive and a lot of people aren't able to keep up with it. And it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. Now, you mentioned the dollar and globalization and de-globalization, and then you've got this Russia situation, and obviously they're a big supplier of energy, and then you've got the petrodollar system, and Russia saying they're not afraid of sanctions, which makes me go, well, like, how much gold do they have? How much Bitcoin do they have? Like, are they going to start selling all their energy in gold and Bitcoin? What's your thoughts on all that and where this whole thing goes?
Yeah. Well, Russia holds 2,300 metric tons of gold. So that they are their reserves. And they've ramped that up since 2018. Now, very interesting and non-coincidental correlation here. At the exact time they started buying all their gold, you got to ask, where did the money come from to buy all that gold? They sold all of their US treasuries. That's what happened. So they sold down from about 85. I mean, don't quote me on this, but I think it was 85. What did it go down to? I think it was 800. Yeah, I'll have to check. I think it was 850 billion down to something like, it was nowhere near that, 150 billion or something, some wow, crazy number. But they got rid of all of their treasury bills. And instead, they started buying gold. See, they're not stupid. The Russians are very smart. They're very good at finance as well. So now you look at it from the question you just asked me, it's pretty obvious what's happening. They're dumping the treasuries because they know the dollar is weak right now under a weak leadership, basically. And I'm not just specifically saying Biden here. I'm just saying the leadership right now in the US is very weak. It's weak in the West in general. During peacetime and very good times, it's fine to have weak leadership. I mean, I give me a choice between strong and weak, and I'll take strong every time. But as a worst case scenario, during peacetime and good times, it's fine to have, weak leaders, let them just do their thing. But during crisis time, you need strong leaders. You've got to. You know what actually happened during World War II in the UK, in England? They called back the guy they said they would never have back to be prime minister, and that was Winston Churchill, because he was a real tough, no-nonsense guy. Now, people hated him. They couldn't stand him because of the way he was. But the guy before him, he was just a shivering wreck. He couldn't handle it all. So they had Churchill come in. He took over and he did what he had to do to, be the strong guy type thing. So, right now we've got a very, very weak leadership. And someone like Putin and Russia, they're not scared of Biden or Boris Johnson or Macron or, any of these other leaders. It's like, what, is this a joke? They're not worried by them at all. And not just that. When you think about the 1920, actually Russia attacked what was then Persia, now Iran, but was then Persia. And there was something called the League of Nations. So people who like their history will understand what I'm talking about here. And the League of Nations was like the United Nations today. So we will come to your aid as an alliance if you're ever attacked. Guess what happened when Russia attacked? You ever guess what happened? Nothing. They were all like, oh yeah, about that. No, we're neutral. We're neutral. No, we didn't understand what it meant, But of course, if they were attacked, they would expect everyone else to come to their aid, But none of them went to the aid. They said, no, we're neutral. And none of them really got involved until they had to get involved from a military point of view. So this is the question I've been asked all week. People are asking me nonstop, calling me, and clients and mentorees and all this other things, and subscribers and the Patreon, and everyone's asking me, what's going to happen? Is NATO going to go to war with Russia? No. I mean, right now, definitely not, because it will escalate. Because Putin is the strong guy, we're talking about. He's laid it out straight. If you want a war, fine, but I've got nukes and I'm not afraid to use them. Like, that's crazy talk, by the way, to say that, but that's basically where we're at right now with it all.
I saw a couple funny tweets. One of them said, I guess Ukraine will move 10% to the big guy to 5%. And I thought that was pretty funny. And then another tweet said, did anyone ever find out why the mayor's wife of Moscow gave Hunter Biden $3.5 million? And I thought that was funny. And one of the things that I wonder out of this, and that one of my guests posed, was in regards to the dollar and the petrodollar system. Where do you think that the dollar goes from here? And is this an orchestrated plan by Russia and China to start to phase out the dollar and increase their, supremacy in the world, either through gold, Bitcoin, or a combination of the both?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been phasing out the dollar for a long time. If they could phase it out right now, they would. But you've got to remember, China holds a lot of treasuries. It has to, because of the trade deficit between China and the USA. And again, a lot of people don't understand that, but they need to hold those US dollars. But what are they going to do with them? Who's going to buy all the treasuries that China's got? They've got to hold a lot of those treasuries to bolster their own currency, because the US dollar is the world reserve currency. But they are as well bolstering their gold reserves. China's buying up a lot of gold. What else are they doing? They're doing what my clients are doing. They're buying commodities and, some value stocks for the dividend paying and mining and things like that. China's been going around and buying everything, all the ports. Let's buy all the mines. Let's buy, mountains in Africa. And, this is what China's doing. But also there's coalitions that exist already between Russia, China, and a lot of the STAN countries, from Uzbekistan and, all this sort of stuff. There's loads of them, half a dozen of these ones. The STANs, I just call them the STANs. Otherwise, you've got to remember every last one of their, country names. But they've already got these alliances. They're fairly loose alliances. But yeah, I think if they could get off the dollar, especially trading oil in the dollar, they would do it in a heartbeat.
Here's what I want to know in conclusion, right? You said we're in this cycle. There's going to be a lot of various crises that surface. There's economic ones. I mean, we didn't even touch on supply chains, food shortages, and also what the ramifications of energy crises are, which obviously is going to lead to more poverty. It's probably going to lead to more death, and it's certainly going to affect supply chains and even bump inflation higher, right? So it's this really weird area. And we could talk all day about what could happen, what might happen, and what are the 10 million problems. But I know you're a man of solutions, and you're looking at this not because you just want to fill your head with a bunch of quote unquote negative things that are happening. Is you're looking at it, deciphering it to find the opportunities in it. And so, what can we do to prepare ourselves? What's the best mindsets and the best tools, systems, opportunities to increase our purchasing power and create financial opportunity in these chaotic times?
Yeah, okay. Well, mindset wise, is a lot of people will say, be positive, have a positive mindset, and just be positive all the time. I wouldn't say that. I'd say there's a time for positivity and positive thinking, and this ain't it, as the expression goes. As I would say in England, this isn't it. But this is not the time for positive thinking. Now is the time to have that fear-based mentality, because only then will you take the actions you need. And I always say you look at it from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Have you got fresh air, oxygen? Were you in a polluted area? Get out of that area. Have you got clean water? Have you got a way to filter your water if you need to? No? Go and buy a water filtration standalone unit, okay, in your kitchen or whatever. Okay, have you got food? No, I've got no food stored. Why not? Oh, I only keep 2 days in the house. Well, that's crazy. Go and get food stored. You see, and this is also financial as well. People say, well, this isn't financial advice and helping us. Well, it is, because these things that you store and you hold, rice and pasta and, whatever you're going to hold, long-term food storage, this is value. This is value. And then once you've gone through these stages, then you look towards, well, I need something in a worst case scenario that I can trade with. And again, I'm not talking investment aspect here, but what can I trade with? Oh, let me see. I'm sure you talk about silver and stuff. I've always got silver, right? So you have silver. You see what we got here? We got some silver 1 ounce rounds. I know I could trade that for some food if I ever needed to. And not just that, it acts as a way to store value and wealth outside of the financial system. What else do we have? We have gold, right? You got gold, 1 ounce. This is a huge store of value right here. A couple $1,000 worth of value right there. If you want to get money out the system, you can store a huge amount in a very small space. And then you can go to the bigger units and whatever else. One thing I'd say is useful but trash. is this stuff, right? So dollars. It's useful, but at the same time, it is trash. It's just paper. It will go to zero at some point. And it doesn't matter, whether you've got what we got here. We got euros and pounds and whatever else. It's all just paper. And the mindset is to
realize colorful, though.
Yeah. That's what it ends up with. That's how it turns out. Yeah. Just shreds. It's just junk. And it loses value. If you take a $100 bill like this, and you go back to 1952, it's the purchasing power today is only $9. You've lost 91% of your purchasing power. So that's the first thing I would say. I'm not going to go into really detailed, specific finance advice and stuff, because my guys get upset because they pay for that in the Patreon and the mentoring and things like that. But I will just say, we're moving from a phase now. If you're in the NASDAQ and tech stocks and growth stocks, I do think you need to start thinking about value stocks now, because we are transitioning. We're in this sort of period where, if you look at these cycles, we're in this period now from value, from growth and tech, and we are moving into value. So some of these things haven't moved in years, some of them decades haven't moved, but now's the time to sort of start looking at them for your portfolio.
Beautiful. So to end, one rapid fire question. What is one of your big crazy predictions that you think can happen, let's say by the end of 2022? It is February 25th, 2022. What's one of them?
I've got so many crazy predictions that, I don't even know where to start with that question. But my craziest prediction that I've got at the moment, I don't know how long this is going to take to play out, but I think there's something very dodgy going on with the financial system and the carbon net zero business. Now, I'm going to do a documentary on this, and I'll let you know when it's out. But I think there's something strange. I think they are going to get the banks to control everything, like financially. And if you don't meet these carbon credit, whatever, goals they have, I think that you're not going to be able to trade and not be able to do business properly. I think they're going to have social credit scores and maybe even carbon lockdowns and things like that. I don't know when this is going to occur. Could be distant future, but that's probably the craziest theory I have out of everything right now. Great Reset, I thought was crazy until it happens. But so this doesn't seem as crazy, but I think we're going to see something around carbon. That's what I think is going to the next sort of big crazy one.
Okay, Neil, I want to thank you for your time today. Everyone listening, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the like button on this video. Give us a comment down below for the good old-fashioned YouTube algorithm. We will link Neil's channel and website right there down below, so go ahead and check it out. And if you haven't yet, make sure you hit the bell notification. Bell notification is what notifies you for new episodes. And thanks to Visa Silver, our sponsor today. And Neil, any last words? Otherwise, thank you very much.
No, YouTube, I'll link it below. Neil McCoy Ward for my YouTube, and same for my Patreon. If you want to get, the paid content, the financial stuff, head on over to patreon.com/Neil McCoy Ward. All right, thanks.